Have you ever looked back and realized that the hardest moments of your life didn't come from when you trusted yourself, but from when you didn't? For a long time, I believed everyone else had the answers. My parents, mentors, people I thought were wiser. I assumed they knew better than me. And even when something deep inside whispered, "This doesn't feel right," I ignored it. Every time I did, I lost a little more of myself. Looking back now, I can see that some of my greatest suffering didn't come from bad luck or wrong timing. It came from outsourcing my truth. I thought that following other people's advice was the safe path. But the truth is, it cost me more than I could have ever imagined. And yet, that pain became the very thing that woke me up. Because there comes a point in every person's life when the opinions, the rules, and the expectations of others no longer fit. You can feel it, that quiet pull inside saying, it's time to trust yourself. That's your soul reclaiming authority. And when you start listening, life begins to shift. Not because it suddenly gets easier, but because you finally stop betraying your own inner knowing. Today, I want to help you stop outsourcing your truth and start living from that deep, quiet place within that already knows who you are, what you're capable of, and what your next step really is. Because once you trust that voice, nothing outside of you will ever have power over you again. From the moment we're born, we start learning whose voices matter and whose don't. Most of us are taught to listen to everyone but ourselves. Parents, teachers, pastors, bosses. The world trains us early to trade our intuition for approval. Do it this way. Be realistic. Don't question authority. And because we crave love and safety, we comply. We silence the small voice inside that says, something's not right. That's how it begins. Not as rebellion, but as survival. For me, this pattern ran deep. Even when I felt a strong, intuitive nudge to go one way, I'd often let someone else's reasoning talk me out of it. I guess I thought that I made so many mistakes and messed up so many times, my voice was wrong. I felt like everyone else had the answer somehow, and I didn't. But the truth is, I was handing away my authority without even realizing it. And that's what so many of us do. Not because we're weak, but because we're raised to believe that trusting ourselves is reckless. We learn to confuse obedience with love and conformity with wisdom. But here's the painful truth. Every time you silence your intuition to make someone else comfortable, you teach your nervous system that your truth can't be trusted. You start outsourcing your power, one decision at a time, until you no longer recognize what your own voice sounds like. And it's no wonder that by the time we're adults, we feel disconnected, indecisive, and lost. We've spent our whole lives trying to meet standards that were never aligned with who we really are. That's why this work matters. Because the moment you begin to listen inward, even a little, you start remembering. You remember what peace feels like. You remember what alignment feels like. You remember you. It's like a muscle that lies dormant until you begin trusting it. That's when it awakens. And the more you do, the stronger it gets. When I first started my practice, I thought I knew what hard was. I didn't. 6 months in, I went flat broke. My wife and I packed up our things and moved in my parents' home 3 hours away. I was embarrassed, exhausted, and questioning everything. Not just my business, but myself. The logical part of me said, just quit. Go back to what's safe. Go back to what you know. But there was another voice within me, quiet but unshakable, that kept saying, Mike, you can do this. You're the one. Just hang on. And that voice, that was my truth. I didn't know how things would work out. I just knew I couldn't turn my back on that inner guidance again. So, every week for nearly 2 years, I drove 3 hours one way to see clients, packed my sessions into 2 days, and slept in my truck overnight in a Walmart or McDonald's parking lot. I'd shower at a local gym and head into my office, ready to help people heal their lives, even while I was still healing my own. It wasn't glamorous, it was humbling, but it was real. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't always lead you to comfort, but it always leads you to freedom. Eventually, I found a small office, which I currently still work in, with just enough space to work and sleep, a bathroom, a waiting room, and an air mattress on the floor. I stayed the course. I followed the voice. And years later, that same voice led me here, to a thriving practice, best-selling books, awards, and a life filled with peace, purpose, and impact far beyond what I ever imagined. But I want to be clear, none of that would have happened if I had listened to the world instead of myself. Because everything outside of me, logic, fear, and opinions, gave me every reason to quit. But my intuition gave me one reason to stay: truth. And that reason was enough. We live in a world that's louder than ever. Opinions, news, social media, the constant hum of other people's beliefs, fears, and projections, all screaming for your attention. And here's the thing. Most people mistake that noise for truth. They're so desperate to find the answers after being trapped underneath the conditioning of a world full of misdirection and confusion. They scroll for it, they pray for it, they Google it. They compare their lives to what they see online and then wonder why they feel so disconnected. But the truth doesn't live out there. Truth lives in here. It's not found in information, it's found in awareness. Truth is still, it's patient. It doesn't compete for attention because it doesn't have to. It's been inside you all along, waiting for you to get quiet enough to hear it. See, the mind wants to analyze, predict, and control, but the soul simply knows. When I was sleeping on that office floor, I didn't have a roadmap. I didn't have a 5-year plan. I had a knowing, one that didn't make sense logically, but felt peaceful and right underneath all the fear. That's how I knew it was truth. And that's how you can tell too. Truth has a frequency, a stillness that lives underneath the noise. When something is true for you, it feels calm, even if it scares you. When it's false, it feels chaotic, even if it looks good on paper. That's the difference between the voice of conditioning and the voice of consciousness. Conditioning speaks from fear. What if you fail? What will people think? Consciousness speaks from truth. You already know. And awakening is nothing more than learning to tell the difference. Because when you can tell the difference, you stop chasing certainty and start trusting awareness. You stop trying to find the truth and start living it. So, how do you begin to reclaim your truth? It starts with something most people overlook: stillness. Not silence, not meditation as a technique, but simply pausing long enough to hear what's already there. Before you call a friend, before you scroll for answers, before you look for a sign, just stop and ask yourself, if no one could tell me what to do right now, what would I already know? The first feeling that comes before your mind begins editing, that's your inner compass. It may not be loud, it may not make logical sense, but it will feel clear. That's step 1. Listen. Step 2, feel. Your body is the most honest voice you have, and it's an incredibly intelligent machine designed to help guide you in life. When you're in truth, your body expands. There's a sense of peace, openness, and even relief. When you're out of truth, it contracts. You feel tension, resistance, or that subtle pit in your stomach that says something's off. Start noticing that. Don't try to fix it, just recognize it. Awareness itself begins the healing. Step 3, practice with small things. What do you want for lunch? Do you really want to go to that event, or are you saying yes out of guilt? When you start honoring your truth in small decisions, it becomes second nature in the big ones. And step 4, stand by your truth even when it's inconvenient. Truth will often cost you comfort. It might mean saying no when everyone else expects a yes. It might mean choosing peace over approval or rest over productivity. But every time you choose your truth, you reclaim a piece of your power. And piece by piece, you start remembering who you are. Not the version shaped by expectation, but the version guided by wisdom. That's how you stop outsourcing truth. Not by trying harder to be right, but by learning to trust yourself enough to be real. I once worked with a client who came to me completely paralyzed by indecision. She was successful by every external measure: a thriving business, a nice home, a life that looked put together. But on the inside, she was exhausted. Every decision felt like a battle. She'd call several people before choosing anything, constantly searching for reassurance she never truly believed. When we began working together, I asked her one simple question. When was the last time you made a decision that was fully yours? She sat in silence for a long time. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "I don't remember." That was the moment her healing began. Not when she found a new strategy, but when she realized how long she'd been living someone else's life. We worked on slowing things down, listening, feeling, trusting the first impulse before the mind could drown it out. The first few weeks were tough. The silence felt uncomfortable. She said, "It's like I don't know who I am without everyone else's voices in my head." But then something changed. One morning she called me and said, "I finally made a decision without asking anyone. I just knew it. It felt peaceful, and that peace hasn't left." That's what self-trust feels like. You stop needing other people to confirm what your soul already knows. You stop apologizing for your intuition, and you start living from a grounded calm that no one can shake. By the end of our work together, she wasn't just making decisions, she was leading her life again. Not from ego, but from awareness. Not from fear, but from truth. That's what coming home to yourself really means. If you've been doubting yourself lately, second-guessing your choices, questioning your path, I want you to pause for a moment, right now. Take a breath. Because the truth you've been searching for isn't out there. It's right here. Always has been. It's the quiet pull that guided you through every storm, even when you didn't realize it was leading you home. The world will always have opinions. People will always have advice. But no one else can hear what your soul is whispering to you. You don't need to fight for your truth. You just need to stop running from it. Because your knowing, that deep, still presence within, it's not uncertain. It's never gone. It's simply been waiting for you to remember and tune into it. And if this message resonates with you, if you're ready to stop giving your power away to fear, opinions, and programs that were never yours to carry, then I want to help you strengthen that inner compass. You can download your free copy of my book, Fight Back, using the link below. It's not just a read. It's a process for clearing out the noise and rebuilding trust in your own inner path. And if you're ready for hands-on guidance, you can book a free consultation with me. Together, we'll help you remember how to listen, trust, and live from that higher knowing where peace replaces doubt and clarity replaces chaos. Because when you stop outsourcing your truth, you stop surviving by the world's rules, and you start living by your soul's design. And that's true freedom.